Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim. So, yes, I'm sitting in the Padmaloka shrine room, where there are no sisters as far as I can see, but I would very much like this video to go out to the entire Triratna Buddhist community, or to as many people who would like to listen to it. This is one of our offerings from Padmaloka to the Sangha in this time of great challenge, great difficulty, great fear and anxiety. We're very, very fortunate at Padmaloka. There's 18 of us here at the moment, the community, plus 2 former community members, Terra and Padmavajra, who are stranded with us. They can't get back to France or Germany, and we're very, very happy to have them here. And it's, as you can see from this little portion of the shrine room that is being filmed, it's very, very beautiful here. I'm sitting in front of Akshobhya Buddha, Manjushri and peaceful Vajrapani, surrounded by other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, white Tara. And you can also see behind me the Buddha tiles, which you can all participate in throughout the world. If you want a tile, you can paint one and send it to us. We'll send you a tile, and it would be wonderful if you could contribute to our shrine room. The whole shrine room is going to be filled with these tiles of the Buddha. So it'd be really wonderful if you were a part of that. We'd love you to be a part of that. Man or woman, adult or child, wherever you are, you can be part of what we're doing as we can be part of what you're doing, and that can be symbolized by the Buddha tile painting. It's a beautiful day here. It's very clear, very bright, beautiful blue sky. The daffodils are blooming, the blossoms are blooming. You can hear bird song. They're all the signs of spring, and yet it's weirdly quiet. It's weirdly quiet. There's much less traffic. There's hardly seemingly a plane in the sky. We feel very much away from things in our very beautiful environment, but we are very, very conscious indeed of the challenges and difficulties that so many of you are facing. We're keeping an eye on the news, where people are writing to us, telling us how they're getting on. Very moving emails from people feeling very alone, or sometimes right in the front line of things, working in the health service, and so on. And this is touching us very deeply. We have no idea what our future will be, and we're very conscious that that's the state of the entire world at the moment. Nobody knows where we're headed in the end, because of the consequences of this virus that is spreading through the lands. What I wish to do every Tuesday is to give a talk and to have it videoed and recorded. I want to go through that great 8th century Buddhist text, the Bodhicharyavatara of Shantideva. Seems somehow the key text for me at this time, because it describes entering into the life of a bodhisattva and all of the trainings involved in that, and the development of an entirely different relationship with the whole of life, an entirely profoundly altruistic relationship with the whole of life. So I want to explore that. But today is a very, very special day for us. In fact, it's a special day for many, because it's the 30th anniversary of the death of Urgyen Sangharakshita's great teacher, the Venerable Dhardo Rimpoche. He died 30 years ago, Tubtum Lundup Lesang. Born in 1918, died in 1990. And we feel a very special connection with Rinpoche, because Sangharakshita enshrined a portion of the relics that came from Rinpoche's cremation. I had the great good fortune of being here for that enshrinement ceremony. Dharmachari Rupa Darshan had sculpted a very, very beautiful stupa. Rupa Darshan, if you're listening to this, the stupa is still there, wearing well after all these years. It's a beautiful stupa. And yes, I remember that the day. It was very much a day like this, actually. Very, very beautiful day, I remember. And I remember doing a special puja with the relics, the tsatsas on the shrine, and gathering them up, placing them in a lead casket, a sealed casket, and Bhante Sangharakshita installing them right in the heart of the stupa, with Rupa Darshan helping, and with lots of chanting of mantras. And I think we also read the appearance of the stupa in the White Lotus Sutra at that time. And the stupa is immediately outside of our shrine room. So every time we come into the shrine room, every time we leave the shrine room, we circumambulate the stupa, Dhardo Rimpoche's stupa. There's a constant reminder of him at Padmaloka. And today we've adorned the courtyard with flags, and there are lovely flowers around about. It's a very, very important area of the retreat centre. This is very much the heart of the retreat centre, the stupa courtyard and the shrine room. And we're very, very grateful to Bhante for giving to us a portion of Rinpoche's relics. And I remember another day, again, very similar to today, weather-wise, a bright day, when those great disciples of Dhardo Rinpoche, Mr. Jampal Kalden, the director of the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Cultural Institute, and his wife, Mrs. Kalden, they came with a party. They were in Britain and they drove all the way, they were brought all the way to have a day with us. And that was a really wonderful experience to see their devotion for Rinpoche, to really, in a way, show us how to be devoted. In those days, the courtyard wasn't nicely paved as it is now. It was covered in gravel. We didn't have the money to pave it at that time. But Mr. Kalden and his wife, as soon as they saw Rinpoche's stupa, they prostrated. They prostrated in gravel. And they made offerings, and they kneeled in front of the stupa, performing a special guru puja to Dhardo Rinpoche. Mr. Kalden told me that they were performing this puja to Tsongkhapa, Dhardo Rinpoche. Tsongkhapa was the founder of the Gelugpa school, and Dhardo Rinpoche was a Gelugpa Lama. So you identify your teacher with Tsongkhapa. And they performed that puja. It was very moving, very inspiring to have them here with us. And the way they talked about Rinpoche and the work of the school was very, very moving for us. So it's a wonderful thing to have Rinpoche's presence here. And of course, it was Rinpoche who gave Bhante his bodhisattva ordination, who gave Sangharakshita his bodhisattva ordination in, I think it was 1962, not long before he left Kalimpong. And Bhante told us that he was very careful who he took his bodhisattva vow from. Of course, he'd had initiations from some of the greatest lamas of the first part of the 20th century. But he said he observed Dhardo Rinpoche very, very closely, and he said, I have a very critical mind. And he observed Rinpoche very closely. And of course, Dhardo Rinpoche and Bhante had a friendship. They regarded each other as friends, as well as Rinpoche being Bhante's teacher. But he said, what Bhante said, he just saw this continuous positivity and mindfulness, this continuous loving kindness and mindfulness and practicality, and this great compassion in relation to his school. He saw all the qualities of a bodhisattva. He said he never saw Rinpoche upset, he never saw him angry, he never saw him depressed, even though he was treated very, very badly on occasion by various officials of different kinds, even though he was betrayed very, very badly by people. He said the only time he saw something was when somebody at some function in Kalimpong was gratuitously rude to Rinpoche. And Rinpoche was just puzzled. He just said, Bhante said, there was just this puzzlement on his face as to how could somebody be so unpleasant to somebody for no reason. So Bhante said that when he took his bodhisattva ordination, I think he put it as strongly as this, it was the happiest day of his life, committing himself to the bodhisattva path, to gaining enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And Rinpoche explained to him very, very carefully what are called the root and branch downfalls from the bodhisattva vow, from the bodhicitta, which we've sometimes studied. He was very, very careful to explain them according to the tradition of the great Tsongkhapa. So today, one of the things that's been on my mind, mentioning Rinpoche, mentioning Bhante, mentioning friends, is a wonderful verse from a text by the great Tsongkhapa, which goes, it's the first verse of a text called The Foundation of All Excellence. The kind, reverend teacher is the foundation of all excellence. Seeing that dependence on him is the root of the path, may I rely on him with great reverence and continuous effort. I really love that verse, and according to Geshe Wangyal, this is his translation of it, it's this text, it's a short text on the stages of the path, would be recited last thing at night by Gelugpa monks. It would come at the end of the day, and I wonder if Rinpoche might himself have chanted this text in Tibetan. Rinpoche was very, very famous for his guru devotion. When I met Rinpoche, I had the great good fortune of meeting him when I was in India in the late 1970s. I went to Kalimpong to see him. I'll say perhaps a few other things about that as we go on. But one of the things I was eager to talk to him about was his teacher, because I was aware that Rinpoche was a great Lama, and he would have had some of the greatest Lamas of his age. And he didn't talk about any of those. He had many teachers who gave him initiations and teachings. He talked about his personal tutor. And he just said, my teacher was a very simple monk. He was very, very kind to me. And he started to well up with tears. And whatever I have learned has really come from him. It was so moving. The first meeting I had with Rinpoche, he was immediately talking with love and reverence and devotion for his teacher. He says, in fact, this is from this wonderful book, The Wheel and the Diamond, which Suvajra wrote many years ago, and I'm hoping he'll produce another edition of it, because it's a wonderful collection of stories, and it's a wonderful book. So Rinpoche says, I remember my guru with great fondness, and I remember very clearly all his words of advice, kindness and instruction. In respect of my religious studies, he was really a great guru. When I remember and think of those things, my eyes well up with tears. And other people said how devoted Rinpoche was to his teacher, and what a kind teacher he was, what a special teacher he was. One contemporary of Dhardo Rinpoche says that Dhardo Rinpoche's teacher was like a mother to us all. You can imagine in these big, big monasteries, these young tulkus, these young monks, the teachers are going to have to be everything, to these youngsters, educating them, bringing them up, transmitting not just the Dharma to them, but really being encouraging and nurturing. And also, it has to be said, Rinpoche said that his teacher was very, very strict. Very, very strict indeed, in terms of getting him really to understand how to train as a bodhisattva. So I think at this time of teachers, I think of teachers and friends, because it's only because of my own teacher, because of Urgyen Sangharakshita, that I've come to have an awareness of Dhardo Rimpoche, that I managed to meet Dhardo Rimpoche. I would not have come anywhere near Dhardo Rimpoche if I hadn't had Urgyen Sangharakshita Bhante as my teacher and received the Dharma with great kindness from him. I'm in that lineage, if you like. Dhardo Rinpoche, Sangharakshita, all of us are in that lineage. But I don't just think of Bhante and Dhardo Rinpoche. I also think of so many friends. I wouldn't have met Dhardo Rinpoche if it hadn't been for Lokamitra. I was in India because of Lokamitra, and it was Lokamitra and indeed Surita, who's here, who were the first order members to actually meet Dhardo Rinpoche back in the 1970s. That connection was formed through Lokamitra and Surita with Dhardo Rinpoche on the basis, of course, of Bhante being our teacher. I also think of Suvajra, who's done so much to make us aware of Dhardo Rinpoche. Suvajra spent, many hours, many days with Dhardo Rinpoche. There's some wonderful films that have been made by Moksha Priya and others who were with Suvajra at that time, Mokshananda, I think others as well, having conversations with Rinpoche. So we're part of this great network of people who've had encounters with Dhardo Rinpoche. There are people who've never met Dhardo Rinpoche, but they've read his life story, they've seen his photograph, and they feel very connected with him. And of course, there are others as well who have made a connection with Dhardo Rinpoche's incarnation, Dhardo Tulku, who I believe is still studying in one of the Gelugpa monasteries in South India. People have made connections with him. So at this time of, we're more and more weirdly isolated from one another, we can make these imaginative, real connections, or remember the real connections that we have with so many because of Dhardo Rinpoche, because of Urgyen Sangharakshita. We're profoundly connected. So I want to say a little bit about just some very bare bones to do with Dhardo Rinpoche's life. And then I really want to talk about his teaching, or an aspect of his teaching, and what we can learn from that, and not just at Padmaloka, but hopefully it will benefit other people seeing this talk. So as I said, Dhardo Rinpoche Thupten Lundup Lesang was born in 1918. He was the incarnation of the previous Dhardo Rinpoche. I'm not quite sure if he was our Dhardo Rinpoche is the 12th or 13th in the line of Dhardo Tulkus. It seems to be slightly unclear. But he was there's this fascinating bit of Tibetan religious history going on, because Rinpoche was born at Dorje Drak, or near Dorje Drak Monastery in Dartsendo, which was a Nyingma monastery. His previous incarnation was actually a Nyingma incarnation, who went on a pilgrimage to Lhasa and ended up meeting some of the great Gelugpa lamas of the time and became a Gelugpa. Apparently this wasn't unusual. I think somebody said that the great 13th Dalai Lama quite liked converting Nyingma lamas to the Gelug school. And this previous incarnation of Dhardo Rinpoche was very close to the great 13th Dalai Lama. And you'll remember that we're studying at the moment in the community that wonderful sermon by the great 13th, given at the great prayer festival on death and the Bodhisattva trainings. We're studying that, and I like to think that the previous incarnation of Dhardo Rinpoche might well have been present at that sermon. I like to think that. Bhante once said to Rinpoche when they were getting to know each other, perhaps quite a long way into getting to know each other, he said to Rinpoche, Rinpoche, it's strange, isn't it, that all of my teachers are Nyingma except you. You're a Gelugpa. And Dhardo Rinpoche said, actually, I'm really a Nyingma. And he was a devoted Gelug incarnate Lama. But Bhante felt that his spiritual side was profoundly Nyingmapa, and he did give Nyingmapa teachings to Bhante. He helped him translate the Tabe de Lam, which is a Nyingmapa preliminary yogas, Mula Yogas book that Bhante has taught us and which we still practice. That all comes through the oral transmission of Dhardo Rimpoche. So there's this, in fact, Dhardo Rimpoche was profoundly non-sectarian. He was famous for being non-sectarian. I asked him, in fact, on that meeting, I really was fascinated in things Tibetan when I met him in Kalimpong. I said, what are the differences between the four main schools? Are there any differences? And he said, I have looked into this matter. This was all via his translator, Jampal Kalden. I have looked into this matter very deeply for many years, and I have come to the conclusion that there is no essential difference between any of the schools of Tibetan Buddhism. That was the end of it. So very, very clear, his non-sectarian approach. But he was recognized as an incarnation of this great Lama, this great associate of the great 13th Dalai Lama, and was taken to Drepung Monastery for his training. And there's a wonderful detail about this. I think he's very young, maybe 8 years old, and he's been taken into procession for the enthronement ceremony. And even at that age, he reflects that all these people are relating to me as a bodhisattva. They all believe that I'm a bodhisattva, but I'm not a bodhisattva. So even at that age, he knew he wasn't a bodhisattva. Seems to have known what a bodhisattva was. He knew he wasn't a bodhisattva. What I need to do is to make every effort to become a bodhisattva. And he made very clear in a teaching to Suvajra and his friends, to his order member friends, you can all become Rinpoches. You can all become Rinpoches. A Rinpoche means you're a bodhisattva. Anybody can do that if they make the effort. So he didn't stand on any ceremony. In fact, he was very critical of the whole Tulku system. There's an early sermon which he listens to of a great Gelug Lama who says, from now on, I want no more offerings, no more lavish offerings. This must end. And Rinpoche was very struck by that, the renunciation of this very great Lama, and it really stuck in his mind. So Rinpoche really, really studied very, very hard at Drepung. It's a very, very strict training, and became a Larangpa Geshe. That's the highest Geshe. He would have been the top Geshe of his year, the top Doctor of Divinity, if you like, of his year. But he tied with a Mongolian Lama, and if there was a tie, the person who'd come from furthest away would be made the top Lama. So Rinpoche used to joke how he didn't become top. And then after that, of course, you go into the Tantric College, the Gyoto, the Tantric College, and this is very, very strict training. Any idea that Tantra is to do with sort of self-indulgence and having a groovy time is completely dispelled when you read Rinpoche's account of being in the Gyoto monasteries, sleeping on the floor, 2 hours sleep if you're lucky, every night, very little food, constantly meditating, performing rituals and studying. And unfortunately, his health broke down, very, very badly, and he couldn't continue. There was other grief. His teacher died and so on. So it was a very, very difficult time for him. And he used to joke to Bhante, he said, I'm not really a Tantric Lama because I didn't complete my Tantric studies, even though he was a very great Tantric Lama, but he used to joke like that, well, I'm not really a proper Tantric Lama. In 1951, he made his way to India, to seek a cure for the illness that he had, and began to sort of settle there more. And in 1951, the Tibetan government in exile appointed him the abbot of the Gelugpa monastery in Bodh Gaya, and we heard a bit about that this morning. That was the first time he saw Bhante. That wasn't an easy time for him, because he tried to really bring more discipline to the monastery. He thought the monks were slack, and he got into a lot of difficulty and a lot of politicking, which does go on in Tibetan Buddhism. And he left, returned to Kalimpong, and he took a vow that he would never involve himself ever again in anything that involved anything like politics. And he was unusual because he worked slightly outside of the Tibetan hierarchy. In fact, for many, many years, he was prevented from seeing the Dalai Lama by Tibetan government officials, and he was very devoted to the Dalai Lama. That did actually change in time. And he concentrated not just on practicing the Dharma, teaching the Dharma, not just helping the community generally. He wanted to respond to the refugees, especially the children pouring out of Tibet because of the Chinese invasion. And he started in 1954 the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Cultural Institute. He'd already been doing some work before then, really responding to what was happening. This incredibly learned man, this great practitioner, really putting into action the Bodhisattva practice of helping the helpless and keeping alive the Dharma and their culture. So that's a little bit about Dhardo Rimpoche, and you can read more in the Sign of the Golden Wheel, and also in Dhardo Rinpoche's celebration. If you can get these books, I'm sure you'll find them online. Probably can't go out to bookshops, and they probably won't be there anyway, but I'm sure you'll find them online. They are very inspiring. So Rinpoche had a motto for his school: cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. He formulated this motto in Tibetan, and there's a whole there's the school had its own sort of symbol, its own sort of flag, and at the school you see these letters. You can see photographs of it as you enter the school. Cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. He gave that as the school motto. Bhante gave a wonderful talk on this, and it's in Dhardo Rinpoche's celebration. And he makes the point that Rinpoche gave that motto not just for the children, but for the children for when they become adults, for when they become Buddhists, for them to be even bodhisattvas. And it's a motto, it's a teaching for us all. It's a teaching not just for the children of the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Cultural Institute and the people who run that school. It's for all of us. By the way, Dhardo Rinpoche regarded the disciples of Sangharakshita as his disciples. He was very, very clear on that, very strong on that. Subhadra used to say that he liked to have photographs. We used to have, on order conventions, we had these great big photographs of all the order members, and Rinpoche would sit with a magnifying glass looking at every single order member and even asking Subhadra who they were. He really felt this sense that these were his sons and daughters because they were the disciples of Sangharakshita. And I can remember writing to him years after I'd met him, thinking that he'd forgotten me, and he said, "Oh, Padmavajra, it's so good to hear from you. It's been so long since you've been here." I felt slightly told off, but I was amazed that he remembered me, from all those years ago, and I was very, very thankful for his reply to my letter. So I want to go through this teaching: cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. On our stupa, on three sides of the stupa, we have some brass plaques with these three sayings. So we are constantly mindful of cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. We're very conscious of this message of Dhardo Rinpoche. So let's look at Cherish the Doctrine, first of all. Cherish is a very, very beautiful word, isn't it, in English? By the way, it was Bhante who translated the motto into English, the motto of the school, the message of the school. And he talked a lot with Rinpoche about the exact words in English. So they would have communicated in Hindi about to find the right word. So they really worked on that. So they've been it's been very well thought out, that finding the right words to translate the Tibetan and the Hindi. So cherish, it is a very lovely word. Cherish means, of course, to be very fond of. It's from the Latin meaning that for dear, somebody or something that is very, very dear to you. So when you cherish something or someone, you're very fond of them. They're very dear to you. You love them. You treasure them. It also has connotations of protection and nurture, this word cherish. And Rinpoche, I have to say, he embodied cherishing, I would say. He embodied cherishing. One of the striking things about meeting him was this sense of this extraordinary quality of awareness, and I would call it a cherishing awareness. When I went to see him, I waited in the room where we were to meet, and as soon as I arrived at the school and I said who I was, Jampal Kalden rushed off and found Rinpoche. And of course, I brought a kata, a Tibetan scarf. I'd gone to a shop in Darjeeling and I said, I want a kata, I'm going to visit a lama. And they said, well, do you want a high quality one? I said, well, yes, please. And because you have different qualities of kata, so I tried to find one that was good. I don't know if it really was up to the mark, but anyway. And, I wanted to offer it properly. And I did a very clumsy full-length prostration. Rinpoche's response was immediately compassionate. And he was very concerned that I was going to injure myself, which I very nearly did. But there was this tremendous care and concern and consideration. And that was the feeling, this sense of this. Everything was an object of cherishing and respect and reverence, and this sense almost of wonder at everything. I showed him some photos that I carried around with me, very poor photos. One was of Bhante, taken on the weekend of my ordination, and sadly I've lost that photograph, and he's standing with long hair and his robes and this orange gold Tibetan shirt, high collar shirt, and a very poor reproduction of the green Terra mural that's inside the door at Aryatara that I'd had, and some other, I think a Padmasambhava as well. Rinpoche treated them as if they were the most sacred relics. He treated them much more carefully than I did. He held them very carefully, lifted them up to his head. These photographs, these poor photographs. And he kept saying, oh, and he'd do this with the flat of his hand on his head. And it was, I don't need to say that it was completely genuine. This wonderful sense of care and consideration. And this is a hugely intelligent, practical, highly brilliant man. But there was this kind of innocent, pure cherishing. So Rinpoche embodies cherishing for me, the cherishing of life itself. And he's asking us to cherish the doctrine, the Dharma. And in the early days of the school, I remember Bhante saying, that the morning was devoted to teaching the Dharma. The classes in the morning was teaching the Dharma to the children. The afternoons were for the secular subject. This is why it was so difficult for Rinpoche financially, because they didn't want to take a grant from the West Bengal Education Authority, which they could have got, because that would have meant they would have had to change the teaching. It would have become, it would have been an Indian curriculum. And Rinpoche didn't want to do that. He wanted to keep alive the Dharma, not just the Dharma, but the culture of Tibet. The school is famous for keeping alive Tibetan dances and folk songs and music and ballet and things like that, opera, as well as the Dharma. And that's why he was so pleased that the Karuna Trust could make a connection with the Karuna Trust, so that distinctive quality could be kept alive. Bhante, in his discussion of cherishing the Dharma, cherishing the doctrine, says it means, first of all, learning the Dharma. You've got this great teaching of the 3 kinds of wisdom, which I personally believe we need to make much more of. You know, the first kind of level of cherishing the Dharma is listening, hearing the Dharma as the Dharma, not mixing it up with other ideas, really taking it in. During this time of almost enforced retreat and isolation for all of us, it would be really good if people could learn by heart some verses of the Dharma every day. Try to do that. Make that a project. Try to learn a verse or 2 or 3 or 4 or more of the Dhammapada or the Bodhicharyavatara or whatever text moves you. Because when you learn by heart, it's inside you. This idiom in English, learning by heart, I think is wonderful. It's not learning parrot fashion, it's in your heart. That's a real cherishing, isn't it? If something is in your heart, it means you really cherish it. You take it very, very seriously. And it means then you can really reflect upon it. You can go to the Chintamaya Prajna, which is the wisdom. It's not just reflection, it's the wisdom of attending upon. Chinta means a strong wish, a strong engagement with, a strong intention. So you turn that teaching over and over in your mind so that it becomes more internalized. You understand it from the inside more deeply. One of the things that's very striking about Rinpoche when he describes his studies, he said that he would have to learn so many pages of text a day by heart and be able to repeat them. The Geshe exam, it's not a written exam. You have to keep answering questions and cite so many different sutras and shastras. So he had to do all that. But he said when he read, if he didn't understand something, he would not pass on to the next sentence or the next paragraph. He insisted on understanding it before moving on. He was very, very particular about that. So we cherish the Dharma by understanding it. And of course, we cherish the Dharma by practicing it and living it. These 3 need to be going on all at the same time. Hearing, listening, learning, understanding, reflecting upon, and living. Dharmacharya, living the Dharma as fully as possible. That's the greatest way that you can cherish the Dharma. Practicing this bhavanamaya prajna, making the Dharma a living experience. So it changes your life, transforms your life. It becomes from something out there to something profoundly pervading your entire being. And of course Rinpoche was really like that. The way that he practiced was extraordinary. Even right through his life to the end of his life. Suvajra describes this beautifully, rising very early in the morning for several hours of meditation and puja and visualization, doing many, many different practices in the morning. Then the rest of the day devoted to running the school or teaching the Dharma or going to help somebody in difficulty. And then at night, more hours of meditation and puja before going to bed very, very late at night. I think at 11:30 he would go to bed and rise at 4. This was his life. Decades of this. And of course, this living the Dharma in this way fully is not just for him. It's for the benefit of everybody. His training trained him to be a bodhisattva. all that learning, all that Dharma internalized, is so he can respond to so many different kinds of people. Whoever comes, he can communicate with. That's why the learning is valuable. That's why the practice, doing the different practices, is valuable, so we can respond to anybody and everybody. But there is a real, if you like, core doctrine that we need to cherish. We need to cherish all of the Dharma, but there's a core doctrine which goes, Ye dharma hetu prabhava hetung tasang tathagata hyavadat teshang chayo niroda evang vadi mahashramana. Which means the Tathagata has explained the origin of those things which proceed from a cause, their cessation too he has shown. This was the teaching of Ashvajit to Shariputra, when Shariputra asked him to tell him what Dhamma he was following. And he said, I'm a beginner, I'm only a learner. The Tathagata has explained the origin of those things which proceed from a cause, their cessation too he has shown. And we know that Rinpoche would have recited this mantra every day. Because it forms part of sadhana. So of course this is the great doctrine of praticca samutpada. Conditioned co-production. Everything arises in dependence upon conditions. Whatever there is has been brought about through all sorts of conditions, and more things will arise from further conditions. This is the essence of the Dhamma. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. This is the quintessential expression of the inconceivable realization of nirvana. This is the way he put it in an essential summary that we can actually use in our lives. It's very interesting, I think it was Nagabodhi or someone asked Rinpoche, do you want your pupils when they leave the school to be Buddhists? He said, I would be happy that when they leave the school, they know that their actions have consequences. Their actions have consequences. So this is the expression of the doctrine of cherishing the doctrine of praticca samutpada in life. That our actions of body, speech and mind have effects. They impact on others. We impact on other people. And right now we know very well that this teaching is the teaching. You know, we've been asked very, very strongly by our government in the UK, and it's being enforced, you know, all over the world as we speak, to stay away from one another. To stay away from one another unless it's absolutely essential. We've been asked to just stay in our households because there are going to be effects if we go out and about in spreading this virus. And the only way to bring it to an end is through recognizing that our actions, our behaviors have consequences. It's a very, very powerful message that we're getting from reality about the way things interconnect and the way actions affect one another. In terms of our behavior, we need to meditate on the first two verses of the Dhammapada. Experiences, dhammas, are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows even as the cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox, drawing the cart. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. So we really do have to practice this. Notice this, experiences are created by mind and led by mind and produced by mind. I think this is a great teaching for people isolated, for people on their own. Our mind creates our world. Our mind creates what is happening. We need to get a hold of our minds. The manomaya, amazing word, that the mind produces, it makes, it creates. We're always creating our environment. If we indulge, and I can understand why we'd fall into this, but if we indulge in anxiety and fear and worry and attachment and aversion, the result will be drudgery, the repetitive drudgery of like a cartwheel going behind the hoof of the ox. It will be very, very painful. It's understandable. It's very difficult. We need to get a hold of it. No blame, no blame of others. Get a hold of our minds. Conversely, it's also true that if we behave with a pure mind, a pure consciousness, a consciousness made up or of moving in the direction of greater mindfulness, of loving kindness, of generosity, of fellow feeling, the results are going to be happiness. We'll have this sense of the companionship of happiness, like a shadow that never departs. Our lives will be filled with light. This is why meditation is so important in Buddhist practice. This is why practicing the loving kindness meditation, the mindfulness meditation is so crucial, because we're creating a mind that creates a world. It does take a lot of effort. It does take a tremendous effort. I mean, we've got the benefit of being with one another here at Padmaloka. Alone it can be so hard. It can be so hard because we're left with our habits, and we're aware of a very, very frightening world at the moment. But it's the only way. We've got to get a hold of our minds, because it's our mind that creates our world. So we really have to do that, really have to practice this as strongly as we possibly can. So do meditate during this time. Do reflect on the Dharma at this time. Keep seeding your mind with positive impulses. It might seem that not a lot is happening, but believe me, if you keep seeding your mind with positive intentions, something will happen. Rinpoche says a wonderful thing, actually. He says people feel that life is short. Because of this, instead of working for others, they try to acquire wealth for themselves. If we live in this way, we become isolated. Our lives become like bubbles on the surface of water. But people can be inspired by action. If they see something is happening, they can start to give. If you work hard in the right way, the effects will spread like light. Well, the work is going to be the work at this time on our minds and with our speech and in the way we relate to one another. The effects will spread like light. He had great faith in that, Rinpoche. He had great conviction in that, great insight into that. So use this time to really cherish this teaching of conditioned co-production. Actions of body, speech and mind have an effect, have a positive effect. There's a line that Bhante draws our attention to just to finish this little teaching on Cherish the Doctrine. This is from the Pali Canon that goes, Dhamma kammo bhavam hoti, which means one who loves the Dhamma passionately grows. Dhamma kamma means passionately loving the Dharma. If you passionately love the Dharma, if you passionately cherish the Dharma, you will grow, you will change. So meditate on actions having consequences. Really look at that in your experience. Learn those 2 verses of the Dhammapada off by heart. Live like that. Pay attention, to the habitual things. And you'll see that you start to grow and expand and connect. You won't feel so isolated, from one another. So let's go to the next saying, the next part of the motto. Live united. So for obviously in a school, Rinpoche wanted to people, to encourage people, to the children and the teachers, to live united, to live harmoniously, to live as it were as one. Obviously it's not going to be great fun being in a school together if you're arguing and squabbling. Well, right now we need to think of the whole world being united, not just our Buddhist Sangha, but the whole world is united. We are united, actually. We're united in the face of a tremendous challenge because of this virus. In Bhante's talk on the message of Dhardo Rimpoche, he asked the question, what prevents us from living united, He says what prevents us is things like competitiveness, jealousy, fear, ill will, and of course craving and attachment if we're thinking of simply our own happiness. Those are the things that prevent us from living united. We just start to, pull away from one another because of those sorts of emotions. So if we're going to live united, we have to work against those things. Rinpoche had a great teaching on happiness. One of his pupils tells this lovely story where he says Rinpoche was always encouraging us to experience the greater happiness. And he says the greater happiness comes from sharing. He says, supposing you have a rupee. Well, if you make that rupee 50 paisa, one person has 50 paisa, another person has 50 paisa. If you have one sweet, if you cut it in half and give one person half and the other person half, you have more happiness. Because it's not just one person experiencing happiness, another person is experiencing happiness. It's a great teaching. And this child said, I've never forgotten, grown up now, I've never forgotten that teaching. So happiness cannot just be for oneself. It must be shared. It must be the greater happiness. The great Shantideva says, and I'm sure Rinpoche would have known this verse, would have trained in this verse, all misery in the world comes from wishing for your happiness alone. All happiness in the world comes from wishing others happiness. So at this time, we need to think in terms of the happiness of everybody. We may be apart from one another physically. We might not be able to get together with people. Fortunately, because of modern technology, we can see each other through Skype and all those different things. But we've got to do a lot more imaginative work of wishing one another happiness. We need to make people vivid to us all the time. Another thing that, if you really want to boil down what prevents unity, it's in the end selfishness, it's egotism. Bhante says that to realise unity, to live united, you need to go very, very deep. You need to go to shunyata, you need to go to the gambhira level, the profound level, which is voidness, which is emptiness. Rinpoche was, the first time Suvajra met Rinpoche, he was studying a work on shunyata. He was studying the deepest level of things. And it's very, very clear that, from this teaching that if we want to live united, we need to go to the level of shunyata. It's clear that the realization of shunyata, of not self, is not in any way nihilistic. We need to remove the sense of separation of self and other to realize unity. So Bhante says, in saying live united, Rinpoche is saying live egolessly. Live without ego. Stop just living for yourself. Live for others. We have this wonderful teaching in the Dhammapada in the section of on happiness. Happy is the unity of the spiritual community. Happy is the spiritual effort of the united. And as I've said, it's going to have to be an imaginative unity. We need to imagine, in our case, the wider Sangha. Sometimes people are going to have to be imagining family and friends. Here at Padmaloka, although we're right away from any urban centre, we're very, very aware we're as aware as we can be of what's going on there. We're aware of other people in the Sangha and family members and friends. We're aware of doctors and nurses and our leaders. We're aware of the police doing their work and so on. So when we speak of living united at the moment, we need to realize the unity of life. The unity of life itself. Life isn't to be divided up into this person and that person and the other person. We need to realize this very, very powerfully. So this brings us to radiate love. And by love, the love to be radiated is metta, is maitri. It's that universal loving kindness, that friendly loving kindness. The love to be radiated is karuna, mahakaruna, great compassion. Rinpoche's love radiated, not just sitting there in meditation, it radiated through activity. Is one of the most inspiring things about Suvadra's book is the way in which Rinpoche radiated love all his life in a practical way. The way he would go to distant places from Kalimpong to sit with people who would, one of the practices was for a Lama to sit with a dead person. Rinpoche did that, even though he was a great Lama, and his disciples would say, why are you doing that, Rinpoche? He said, well, people have asked us, they've come with hope to us, and we must respond, we must give them hope. This is the way he taught. So he'd sit with very poor people. He would, go to monasteries that weren't Gelugpa monasteries where meat and wine were consumed in the ritual. He didn't mind. He was with those people. He radiated love through his behaviour. And you see it vividly in his last days. When he reached a certain age, in auspicious time, he decided to do the great pilgrimage to Nepal. It seems pretty clear to me he's practicing the way someone who's practiced the mind training dies, where you intensify virtuous action. You build up a tremendous sense of merit and momentum. And he went on pilgrimage to Nepal and he was just giving. Gave money to every beggar, gave money to every monastery, gave teachings, gave initiations. And it was really challenging for Jampol Kalden's family and others, because they said, Rinpoche, we will all be impoverished. He said, you don't understand. And he just kept giving and giving and giving. Extraordinary account, enriching people with himself, with this radiant loving kindness. When he returned to Kalimpong, it seems that he had a stroke and he recovered. Everybody was very happy, but it was quite clear what was going on. He asked for his blankets, even though it was getting cold, to be folded up and put away. He folded up his monastic robes. He became more and more ordinary, more and more ordinary. He even said, when I'm cremated, I don't want to be trussed up like a great Lama is supposed to be. They get forced into the meditation posture and dressed up in their ceremonial robes. And I don't want that. I want to be cremated as an ordinary man. Unfortunately, that wasn't respected. He said to Jampol Kalden to go and get a special text from his library on death so that he could recite it. Jampol Kalden said, no, you don't need that text. It's inauspicious. Rinpoche said, if you don't get it, I'll go and get it myself. So it was brought. And then into the night, he chanted and chanted and chanted with his sonorous chanting, very, very strong chanting, not missing a beat, ringing his bell, banging his damaru, making his offerings to the dead, which he did every day. This tremendous Lama practicing into the night. But then after that, he called Jampol and his family and gave final instructions. He was particularly concerned for the school. He gave last instructions for what needed to be done for the school. They asked him, of course, about his rebirth. And he said to Jampal Khalden, Jampal, only you can recognize me. Only you'll be able to know. Why did you think I brought you out of Tibet? Why do you think, that I've had you with me all this time? Only you can recognize me. It has to be a special boy. I'm not an ordinary person. I have continuous compassion for all beings. What an amazing statement. That's the boy you need to find. And he just, as I say, just gave everything away. So he radiated love in that way. He didn't shrink back. He lived his death, if you like. He lived it fully in relation to others and in relation to the Dharma. And yes, there's this tremendous threat of death in all kinds of ways, of actually dying, of loved ones dying, of a completely changed world. As I said the other day, we don't shrink back. We go on with our skillful action, our creative action. We go on connecting as much as we can with one another. We take inspiration from Rinpoche in this way. I want to end with perhaps something that sums up all this, perhaps. Not long before he left Kalimpong to return to Britain to teach the Dharma, Dhardo Rimpoche gave Bhante the White Tara initiation. Bhante said it was as if it was a kind of parting gift for him. And White Tara, he was very, very concerned that Bhante didn't just receive the sadhana, but also the very elaborate text describing the initiation ritual of the White Tara sadhana. He wanted Bhante not just to practice it, but to transmit it. And he said to Vajra that, in terms of teaching in the West, Rinpoche said, I don't need to teach in the West because Bhante is teaching in the West. Sangharakshita is teaching in the West. He'll do far better than I could, far better than any number of great incarnate lamas could do teaching in the West. He had great faith in Bhante as a teacher. But he gave him this White Tara initiation, and Bhante said, Rinpoche was a friend. They worked together for the Dharma. They spent time together. They studied together. But this was really sealing him as his teacher, giving him this White Tara initiation. And Bhante, I remember when Bhante first started to talk about White Tara in our order and movement. There's a particular seminar that was done here on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Trungpa Rinpoche's commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And he was talking about the importance, it was a chairman's seminar, so he was really talking about the importance of these very dynamic men developing other sides of themselves, the more nurturing, cherishing, more, quote, feminine sides of themselves. And here he talked about White Tara. White Tara, this beautiful white goddess-like figure, Bodhisattva, serving her guru Amitabha, who is above the crown of her head, serving the Buddhas. That's the way he first talked about White Tara. But on other occasions, he's really mentioned White Tara is not just the embodiment of great compassion. She has these 7 eyes, 2 in the usual place, 1 in the forehead, 1 in each hand, and 2 in the feet. You get commentaries on the White Tara figure which relate these to the Brahmaviharas and the Vimokkha-mukhas, the doorways to liberation. But Bhante says, he just said, well, what it says to me is that she's not just the embodiment of compassion and kindness and nurturing and cherishing and protection. She is the embodiment of full and complete awareness, of mindfulness. And he said receiving this initiation into White Tara from Dhardo Rinpoche was very special because he embodied mindfulness, not just compassion, but mindfulness to an exceptional degree, and almost a kind of magical mindfulness, Rinpoche's awareness and mindfulness, a mindfulness that embraces all life, all forms. That's the quality that White Tara is communicating, not just this great compassion, but this all-embracing awareness that really sees what is needed. This is the quality that we need to develop, because these bodhisattvas are not just out there to worship. Of course we need to do that. They are potentialities within us. We meditate on these forms to become them, to become White Tara, serving the Buddhas, serving Amitabha, to become the embodiment of tenderness and compassion and protection and liberation, the embodiment of this all-enveloping, brilliant, clear awareness and mindfulness. So I want to end this, again, rather long talk. I'll try and make them shorter in the coming Tuesdays. We have had feedback on the length of these talks. The good thing is, if you're watching this, you can stop it and go and have a cup of tea and have sort of ad breaks and things like that. But unfortunately, the guys here at Padmaloka have had to pop out a few times as I've been speaking. But anyway, I'll try to make them shorter. But to end, we in the community are going to offer some chanting for you. It's the White Tara Long Life mantra, where we invoke White Tara to increase. We ask her urgently, the word is kuru, which means make it so, do it. It's an imperative. Pushtim kuru, increase ayur, life. This is really important. We want life. Yes, we know that in Buddhist tradition that craving for existence, you could say craving for life, brings you back in the samsara. But life is actually really important. Life is to be cherished. So of course we want people to live long and to be healthy. So we offer this mantra because we want life. Life is the greatest good, as Sangharakshita says, as Bhante says in the 10 Pillars of Buddhism. When people are deprived of that or it's taken away, it's the worst thing that can happen. Life is good. We want there to be life. Human life is very special and needs to be cherished. But life is for something. For life to be life, we need to do something. We need to increase punya. Punya is usually translated as merit. Punya is the fruit of that skillfulness, that creative mind, the fruit of creative action, the fruit of positive emotion. It's punya. Merit isn't a good translation. Punya is the good in the very best sense. It's like an aura of goodness. We need to spread that aura of goodness that comes from our love, from our kindness, from our generosity. That needs to go out into the world. We want that to increase. Life is for this goodness, this momentum, and my goodness, we need to really make it strong now in the world, the effects of skillfulness. And it's for more than that, it's for jnana. Jnana is wisdom, it's knowledge of the Dharma, it's knowledge of reality. We need to increase our awareness of the way things are. We need the way things are to arise powerfully, this realization of the interconnectedness of all of life, of conditioned co-production. We need that awareness, that indestructible awareness. So we're going to invoke White Tara to end this talk with this mantra. I'll just read first this prayer which comes from the White Tara sadhana that Bhante, the Dhardo Rimpoche transmitted to us. And then I'll start the mantra and then we'll finish. Tare, freeing from samsara. Tuttare, freeing from all dangers. Ture, freeing from all diseases. To the mother of all Buddhas I bow down and pray. O noble Tara, I beseech you, please bless all beings, infinite as the sky, with long life, merit and wisdom. Wipe away all disease and destroy all hindrances. Purify the faults and obscurations of all. In short, please give to all without exception every kind of benefit and blessing. Further, I pray that you bless me so that I may fully understand the Dharma, enabling me to guide and benefit others. So in honour of Dhardo Rimpoche, in honour of all beings, we chant the long life mantra of White Tara. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Mama Ayur Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. Om